Brotherly love. So I was young and stupid, but who wasn't? But wait, this isn't exactly about me. Anyways, at around 1998, I was 13 years old and the world was not nearly as globalized as it is today. My cousin Henry and I used to be good friends. He was 1 year older than me, and we were absolutely fascinated by sex and human genitalia. You're probably thinking I had a sexual experience with him. Well, not quite. I sincerely don't remember exactly how we figured sex out, but we just had the facts straight. You had a penis and needed a vagina to insert it, and we knew only women had them. Just so happens that Henry has a sister, Megan, who was 1 year younger than me. Megan has green eyes and fiery hair. She's exceptionally gorgeous. Her favorite thing to do was following us around and seeing what we were up to, maybe participate in our silly ploys or join a fantasy world. Well, one day, Henry and I were talking about sex. Looking back, I can see he was way more fascinated and focused by its intricacies than me. All good, but he began talking about using her sisters to see what it feels like. I didn't think he would actually follow through with it. He must be joking. I knew that if asked, she would do it. She was young and stupid, like ourselves. My uncle divorced my cousin's mother due to an affair she had. My cousin's mother was pretty careless. She would either let her kids hang at my place, so she didn't have to take care of them, or she would leave them alone inside her house, in which case I often visited. I hopped in my bike and went to my cousin's house like always. Didn't think there would be anything special about that day. When I got there, I heard some moaning and groaning, which I thought to be quite odd, but didn't think anything of it. So I got the key from under the rug and opened the door. My cousin Henry had his pants down all the way to his feet, and my cousin Megan scrambled her pants up and bolted. Henry got his pants up and said, "It's so cool! It's all warm and stuff. I love it. You have to try it. If you want, I can get Megan to do that for you too. I got it all the way in and she bled. I think I hurt her." And then he called her back to the room. She was blushing and ashamed of my presence there, I could tell. He asked her to remove her pants, because he wanted to show me how he got it all the way in. Needless to say, she did not comply because of my presence. Her cheeks resembled apples, and she shyly looked at me, that poor girl. He hadn't even realized what he had done, taken his sister's virginity and innocence. Turns out she completely erased that from memory. I once tried to talk to her about it. She either changed the subject or said she didn't remember such a thing. I don't think they ever did it again though, or maybe they did, I don't know. What I do know is that she got a boyfriend when she was 17, and Henry was jealous as fuck. He wanted to kill the guy. Neither one of them ever talked about it. Creepy ex outside my window. When I was 16 years old, I started dating this 20-year-old. It was a very bad relationship, in which I was cheated on and treated like crap. But that is another story for another subreddit. Anyways, after my 17th birthday, I finally dumped him and got him to leave me alone. A couple months later, I was on Skype with one of my old friends around 1 a.m. All of a sudden, I hear tap, tap, tap at my window. Now, my bed is right next to under my window, and my bedroom is on the other side of the house from my parents. I asked my friend if he heard anything, and he said no. A few seconds later, tap, 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 and he said that he heard that. I agreed, ended the Skype call, and ran to my parents' room. I woke my mom up. After telling her why I woke her up, she stopped being angry, and we tried to see if anyone was outside the house. No dice, so I slept in my parents' bed with them. At 17. The next day, my stepdad had apparently seen vague shoe prints outside my window. It happened twice more, and after the third time, my mom called the non-emergency police line and was suggested to put up a motion light and or a security camera. We put up a motion light that day. I've yet to hear knocking on my window since the light was put up. It's been about 2.5 years. I am about 95% certain that it's my psycho ex, because he would come to my window at 1 to 3 a.m. when we were together sometimes and knock. Also, one of my friends who had mutual friends with my ex said my ex was in the area. He lived about 30 miles away from me the nights when the knocking happened. So, my cheating asshole of an ex. Let's not meet again. Sister zoned. Sorry for the long story. For a short time I used to work in a factory. Easy job just walking around. At the time I was new, naive, and very young compared to everyone there, so I got quite adored by the older workers. And then there was this guy, let's call him Andy. Andy seemed to be a nice person, but has anger issues. Since the first day, Andy stopped me mid-work to ask me how I was doing and if I needed anything. It kept going on and on like that, and then he asked me my number. I casually brought up my then boyfriend in case if Andy likes me. That night, I opened my phone to a wall of text from him saying that he doesn't like liars regarding me having a boyfriend, and that he would make a great boyfriend, etc. I had to prove it to him that I was indeed in a relationship. He started talking about his hardships in the past and begged me to be his sister instead, and I agreed to that. What came next was that he started pouring everything in his life out to me. I was fine at first because I felt like I was helping him out by listening to him, but soon, with a number of texts of him reflecting on his past, the way he said I was the only good thing in his life, and how he started getting too literal with the sister status, I got quite annoyed and creeped out. I tried to limit everything down to casual conversations, and part of me just wanted to cut off contact with him. He moved away and quit his job. I also quit not long after. One day I got a text from him, and I remember that I was not going to answer his texts. The following days my phone kept beeping with messages. I can't remember all of them, but these are some, and they wrecked my heart. Why are you ignoring me? Please, sister, please answer me. Do you still love your brother? I want my kids to call you Aunt. Don't leave me like this. You are a part of my life, sister. Why do you hate me? Is this because of my skin, my race, or my religion? Don't hide away from me. I need you to tell me everything. Don't play games with me. I know you still love me. I know you are out there. I'm a human being. I don't like this. Please don't treat me like an animal. I truly feel bad for him, and I do feel like this is a jerk move on me. But at the same time, I felt like I have drained too much energy being someone's clutch, and this person doesn't even know anything about me aside from my phone number, so I kept ignoring him and hoped that he'd get over it. For the next several months, he kept texting me and used new numbers when I blocked the old ones. He also found my social media and messaged me telling me to stop hiding and treat him like an animal. I was terrified and all I could do was blocking him. And on last Thanksgiving, I received a number from another state. Happy Thanksgiving. I answered, I don't think I know you. I'm not from that state. I know. You live in my city. And I need you to do me a favor. I'm your long-lost twin. I cringed at the long-lost twin, and I knew who the hell that was. I told him a couple lies, including that I have passed away, and he's been talking to my only brother. To be honest, I'm still cringing at what I just did. He didn't buy it and said that he was going to my workplace to find out, which I no longer work for. Andy, I hope everything works out for you, and I truly hope, we never meet again. My terrifying ex. This is my first time posting in this sub, but I felt like this should be posted. It all started when I had turned 16, until close to my 18th birthday. When I was 16 years old, my friend had told me one of her boyfriend's friends liked me. I asked which one, and she said Austin. That's his first name, but not the name that he goes by. I said that I would be okay with giving him my number, I guess. She did, and a week later, he became my boyfriend. There was nothing out of the ordinary at first. He seemed like a nice guy, and I felt like I could trust him. Fast forward to a week later, I was at his house, and he wanted to make out with me. I said no because we were in the middle of a video game. He got mad at me and started to have a meltdown. He dragged me upstairs by my hair and I couldn't fight him. Once upstairs, he began to abuse me. I was scared and didn't know what to do. I kept getting abused for a year and a half because I was too scared to leave. Finally I did, and then I found out some pretty weird stuff about him. I had heard from a friend of his back from his hometown that he had planted a bomb in his school and that he tried to light himself on fire. Plus, he had been institutionalized more than once, okay? Major red flags, and I wish I would have known a lot sooner. I graduated high school early at age 17 and then moved out of town and started going to college. I had my Austin blocked from everything. Phone, Facebook, Twitter, basically any social media site I blocked him if he was on it. Not even a month into college, I kept getting these calls and texts from numbers I didn't know. It was him. I had to constantly block numbers. I was getting tired of it, so I answered one. He was asking me which dorm I lived in because he was on campus and wanted to see me. I threatened to get security and the police if he did not leave. He hung up. I had gone home that weekend, a few days after that call, and then there was a knock on the door. I answered it, and it was him. He was holding a coffee cup and smiling at me. He tried handing me the coffee and told me it was my favorite kind. He was right. It was my regular order at the local coffee shop. I asked him how he knew that, and he confessed that he had been watching me when I go there. I quickly shut the door and called the police and told him that was what I was doing. He left, but when I went back outside, the coffee cup was next to my car. The thing is, I don't know how he got my address. None of my friends ever gave it to him, and I sure as hell did not. Fast forward to right before my 18th birthday. I was in the musical at my college, and I've been advertising it on my Facebook so friends and family knew when it was. After our Saturday show, I got a text from an unknown number that said, "Thanks for making me laugh. You did really good tonight." I lost it. I showed one of my girls in the show with me, and she got security to walk me back to my dorm. A few weeks later, I found out that he had bought me birthday presents and wanted me to come get them from his house. I told him no, and he kept bothering me about it. Yet again, he ended up showing up at my house when I was home. It was about 11:30 at night, and I heard a tapping noise at the window. I thought it was the wind making a branch hit the window, so I thought nothing of it. Probably about 10 minutes later, I heard whispering outside. I opened my blinds, and he was standing there. I froze and shut the blinds. I called the police again, and when I got off the phone, went back to the window and told them the police were coming, and that if I ever saw him again, I would get a restraining order. To this day, that was the last time I saw him. So Austin, let's never meet again. My ex-boyfriend's father. When I was around 16 years old, I got my first serious boyfriend. Being the stupid teenager I was into older bad boy types, and it turned out this guy was an awful womanizing creep. And you know what they say, the apple doesn't fall far. He didn't live or get on well with his parents for various reasons, and so I didn't really think much of the fact that he never introduced me to them after a few months of dating. The first parent I encountered was his dad over Facebook. After boyfriend had posted some kind of mushy status about me, some older guy commented on it, lightly teasing boyfriend, before introducing himself to me as boyfriend's father. Let's refer to him as CD for creepy dad from here on out. I replied back, saying it was nice to meet him. The three of us chatted on the status for a bit, until CD started telling me embarrassing stories about boyfriend, and jokingly threatened to send me baby pictures of him. Boyfriend flipped and told his dad to leave. Now, I thought this was a huge overreaction. CD was just being a dad, and at this point, he seemed like a nice guy, so I added CD as a friend. Big mistake. At first, things were fine. We chatted, and I was still in girlfriend trying to make a good impression mode. I made extra effort to be sweet and polite and friendly. Of course, I didn't have much in common with this 50-something-year-old man, but after a while, he told me he did photography. I'm an artist who's dabbled in some amateur photography, so it seemed like a good topic to bond over. And for a few weeks or so, he'd pop up in my Facebook chat, asking to see new photos I'd taken and giving me advice. He also mentioned a couple of times that he liked doing portrait shots, and maybe one day he'd take a nice photo of me. At some point, CD had decided to get to know me better, and he suggested we play a game of 21 Truths. I thought this was a strange suggestion, as 21 Truths is the kind of game young girls play at sleepovers, but I figured he was probably trying to appear cool to me, and I went along with it. We took turns asking questions, and we both answered each question. The first questions were relatively normal. Favorite school subject, what job did I eventually want, that kind of thing. Then it became things like, had I ever gotten in trouble? Had I ever gotten drunk? And then it got weird. He started asking more personal questions, things like, weirdest place you've ever had sex. Bearing in mind, he was also answering all of these questions too, and I was in fact still a virgin, which he seemed to find hard to believe. At this point, I was obviously incredibly uncomfortable, revealing stuff like this to my boyfriend's dad, and I made an excuse to leave. He stopped talking to me quite so regularly after that, but he'd still ask me about photography and still play games like 21 Truths, although he toned down the questions. Even so, I couldn't shake the feeling of being uncomfortable. He also kept bringing up that he wanted to take photos of me, By this time it was autumn, and there was a huge forest nearby. I have long red hair, and he kept telling me how amazing I would look laying on the ground surrounded by the autumn leaves. Naked. He insisted it would be tasteful, with leaves strategically placed on me, but that didn't change the fact that my boyfriend's father had asked to take nude photos of me, and kept asking. I didn't tell my boyfriend any of this. He and his dad seemed to be trying to mend whatever broken bridges they had, and I didn't want to potentially ruin that. I also wasn't really sure how I was supposed to react to any of this. Partway through our relationship, me and my boyfriend decided to take a break, and we split up for about a month. And it wasn't this time that CD suddenly set himself to maximum creepy. He'd message me nearly every day on Facebook and MSN, mostly just asking how I was, but often getting a little too personal. He kept asking if I was still innocent, and the creepy 21 questions game started back up, and he kept insisting that we needed to take photos in the woods while the trees were still pretty colors. Like hell was I going into the woods alone with him, with or without clothes. One night, he seemed extra chatty and told me he'd been drinking a little bit. The same night, he confessed that he was really attracted to me and wondered aloud if anything could ever happen. Let me remind you all, I was 16 at the time. He was 50-something and married. I was super creeped out, but a part of me hoped that maybe it was some kind of sick joke. Like he was keeping an eye on me in case me and my boyfriend got back together. Whatever the case, I blocked him from chatting to me on both MSN and Facebook. Because I was a silly teenager, how did I get back with boyfriend? At some point, as Christmas got closer, boyfriend told me his whole family were going out for a Christmas meal together, and I was invited. Of course, I was dreading it, because I knew CD would be there, and the idea of finally meeting him in person made my whole body go cold. I realized I should probably unblock CD as well, because he must have noticed my absence, and if he brought it up at the meal, it would make for a really uncomfortable situation. So I unblocked him, and almost immediately he messaged me, asking where I'd been. I made some bullshit excuses, and he told me how disappointed he was that we hadn't gotten those photos. He then suggested we wait until it snowed, so we could get together and get those photos of me rolling around in the snow. Naked. God. Luckily, I caught my boyfriend cheating, and suddenly I couldn't convince myself he wasn't a twat any longer. We broke up just in time for me to miss the family meal. What a shame. CD tried to message me a few times, and I completely ignored him. It snowed, and he messaged me about the photos. Then, after Christmas, after a day of shopping in the sales, he messaged me asking how my shopping trip went. Of course, I was creeped and asked how he knew I'd been shopping. He was then able to tell me which shops I went in, and in what order. He described exactly what I was wearing that day, and how he could even tell what were a few of the items I had picked up. He knew what cafe I had gone in, and what flavor muffin I had bought, and he asked again about taking photos. That was the final nope. I deleted him and boyfriend completely from everything. I hate to imagine what it would be like if I ended up in that family. His ex-girlfriend Anna. I met a mutual friend of a coworker's when I worked at an old computer store. I always had weird vibes from him. He was super charismatic and funny, but then would make really mean comments that would really dig deep. I usually kept my distance, but he always made super pervy remarks, but then would make a mean comment to follow up with it. He just gave me an uneasy feeling. Well, somehow, after about 2 years of keeping my distance, he somehow got through to me and we started dating. This was by far one of the most stupid things I've ever done. I definitely should have trusted my gut with this one. One of the first things he told me it was his ex-girlfriend Anna. A group of us were sitting around talking about our first loves and romances, when he told me all about Anna. Anna was this unicorn-like being according to him. She was perfect in every way. She was beautiful, played multiple instruments, and super funny, and they were super happy. I guess one day Anna got in a car accident and she passed away. He was so distraught and said he still had issues with it. He felt like he had found the one, but she died. I kind of associated this with the kind of crass attitude he had sometimes. There were multiple times he compared her to me. He would tell me about how sometimes our eyes look so similar, but it was just different. I always felt like I had to live up to Anna. He would tell me how about the jokes she used to make were funny, and her impressions, etc. But one day, he was super distraught and told me about how he looked at his old MySpace account and how depressing it was. All of her friends would post on her page once a year to tell her how much they missed her, etc. He said it was popping up all over his bulletin feed. He was super depressed about all day, kept on trying to start arguments, then would cry because of Anna sometimes, etc. He got over it by the next day and we continued on like usual. Well, one day, probably about 6 months later, he got super crazy and started crying nonstop. He told me that he found out Anna had lied to him about dying. She had her parents call him to lie about the car accident she was in, and it was this big elaborate scheme. Well, I didn't know what to do. He was pushing me away, being extremely cruel and acting totally crazy, so I went and called his mom. We were only 20 at the time. His mom was so confused. I told her that he just found out Anna was never dead, when she finally had to stop me and say, "Desiree, Anna never died. He knew Anna was never dead. They just broke up after a car accident, because for one reason or another, it just wasn't working out anymore." So this guy had pretty much been telling me this story to emotionally manipulate me for about a year and a half. I was so brainwashed by him that I didn't even break up with him then. When I told him about how I talked to his mother about it, I immediately wished I never told him anything. He got so angry, he tried to crush his phone, then started crying about wanting to crush his phone. He threatened to take me outside and smash my head against the concrete repeatedly if I couldn't control myself in the future. Good times. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end of our relationship or the end of his elaborate lies, but I'm very happy we haven't met again in 4 or 5 years. He was such a sociopath. I know this isn't the most scary story on here, but I definitely was scared when I found out he had lied to me about this. I finally threatened him with a restraining order after our relationship ended. He texted, emailed, called my grandparents, etc., basically trying to lure me back in. No thanks. Surprised the extent of which my ex stalks me. So when we broke up, she left me for some guy pretty much, and I've been ignoring her for a long time. She was definitely a bitter, since it's kinda like I gave her to him. I used to get texts, unknown calls, she would ask my friends about me. Well, it died down when she got a new boyfriend. I blocked and deleted her from all my social media, but she somehow checks my Facebook, and mine is set on private, so you have to add me to view it. She is able to see all of my wall probably, by using her friend's account or by using a fake one. But I have this one account, let's call my stalker account, that I use to do random shit or pretty much a junk email. While I have LinkedIn, and my ex added me once and I rejected. She used to view my profile, but now she got smart and have LinkedIn Anonymous to view it. I am pretty sure that's her cause my LinkedIn profile is dead with no picture, and no one ever views it. Well, I also signed up my junk email for it and I have nothing on it. I forgot I made even that account. I logged on both my accounts and I see that the anonymous person has viewed both of my accounts in the same time period. I'm blown, cause this junk email is like no one knows about it, and my ex knows about the account. I don't have any hard evidence, but it's just my assumptions, you know? I'm worried about how much she knows, like my Reddit accounts. She messaged me on this video chat app saying, "Did you message me?" After years of ignoring her, and I responded with confusion. Now she stopped responding, so is this her? I am mind blown how much she knows. Pill-popping ex comes by uninvited. I just remembered this and thought how dangerous of a situation I was in when I was 20. I was going to hair school, and I lived in a small apartment with a few other girls around my age. Across the way were other apartments. My acquaintance Riley from high school lived there and went to hair school with me. When we were bored, we would walk over to Walmart to walk the aisles and get a drink. I was looking around until I realized I lost Riley and found her talking to a man. Riley was flirting with him and chatting him up. I at first didn't like him. His shirt was half untucked and his shaved head had mosquito bites on it. He was talking with an accent saying he was from England. He looked 30 years old and his name was Adam. Anyways, Riley talked him into walking with us even though I was unsure about him. When we walked past a liquor store, Riley bluntly asked if Adam would buy us all booze and hang out at her place. We agreed to, and we waited outside. Even though he was a stranger, he seemed nice. Even though he seemed off to me at first, I was very naive and sheltered, especially right out of high school. We walked back to Riley's apartment and had a little party. We eventually clicked, I suppose. I found out he was in the halfway house and would come to visit me. After a while, his stories weren't making sense. I once asked Adam why the laundry didn't get done, like he said he would, and told me this 15-minute story about why it wasn't done. He would ask to borrow money from me as well. Once asking to borrow $55 for flowers for his mom, he would guilt-trip me or try to manipulate my feelings into seeing his way. And during this, I had no clue how to confront him or what to do. I was afraid he'd get mad or go nuts. Later on, Riley is telling me he's a liar. I was confused, because Riley was also a compulsive liar and exaggerated. I didn't come to reality till my mom was worried and checked his criminal background. He had 2 restraining orders from his exes. He also had over 1,000 in property damage and had a warrant out for his arrest. He was arrested at his job, and they found a bottle of oxycodone. He had them in an Advil bottle, not his prescription, on him, so he hauled his ass to jail. During this time, my landlord is super pissed at me. Before Adam goes to jail, he robs my roommate's necklace. He tells me I should just throw away Adam's items. They were just biochemistry books and clothes. I toss that shit and try to forget about him. Several weeks later, I hear a familiar knock on my door and it's near midnight. I think it's my aunt and go to open it. It's Adam. I freeze and my heart sinks. I'm in shock, as I say he's not supposed to be here. He is agitated and is asking for his stuff back. Before I answer him, I close my door and lock it. I open the living room door a crack and yell that I threw it away. He's angry and threatens that he's going to sue me, because he claims there were family pictures inside it. That's a lie, actually. I tell him I'm calling the police. He eventually leaves and the police show up. They take note of him, but they can't do much. Luckily, he's never bothered me again. I knew what suspicious behaviors to expect after all that. My mom always checks out my boyfriend's backgrounds to double-check any criminal history after that. I felt so tricked and dumb. I'm just glad it didn't last years. Older, attractive, creepy lady. So this happened to me many years ago. Not a stalker type situation, but a creepy meeting, at least to me. Not sure if this is the right platform for this story, but wanted to share. For context, I am a guy who was about 23 at the time, and the lady in the story was probably mid-40s. So many years ago, when I was young and single, I went to a nightclub one evening that I frequented on many weekends. There was not much activity going on there at all this particular night, and the place was pretty much empty, with a few patrons and in particular, this one attractive older lady. We had seen each other at the nightclub before, but this was the first time we actually spoke to one another outside a simple hi. She approached me and started small talk. She mentioned how dead it was there and asked if I had heard of this new club in the city that just opened a few weeks ago. I said I did, and she suggested we should leave this club and go to the new one. She suggested that we travel together, since she didn't know exactly how to get there. We agreed and she let me drive her car. Now as soon as we get there, she immediately takes off on me and heads out to the dance floor, dancing, flirting around with other guys, until I lost track of her. Kinda rude, but oh well. Now what bothered me was suddenly a little while later, I realized I had left my car keys in her car. Had set them in the middle console. It was a sickening feeling to realize, crap, if she leaves I can't get home. Hell, I didn't even know her name. Now I finally find her. She has done dancing with some weird-looking guy. I am relieved, asked if she is ready to leave, and we take off. When we get back to where my car is, she starts talking away to me in her car. She tells me how good I treat her, and she wants to start seeing me on a regular basis. What the fuck? I just met her. She ignored me all night, and now she wants to date? Now the creepy part comes in. She tells me that she was once in love, and that she was going to get married. Unfortunately, he got in a bad automobile accident and is paralyzed from the neck down. She said he lives with her and is aware that she has her needs. She then invited me to come home with her and spend the rest of the night. Now this creeped me out. I just heard a very depressing story from her. And she wants to get freaky back at her place with this guy around. She then started jumping all over me and kissing me, and I'm so weirded out from the sad story and the blowing me off at the other club that I tell her that I have a younger sister I have to pick up from her date, and I have to leave to go get her now. I lied, I'm an only child. I wasn't reciprocating the kisses, and I had to pry her off of me. She didn't seem drunk, just very weird, like I broke her heart. I ran into her again a few weeks later at the nightclub I first met her at, and she started trying to talk again. I walked away, wasn't interested. She did have a friend come over and deliver an apology, so at least I got that. I did see her once many years later when I was still dating my wife, but luckily she did not recognize me. Let's never meet again. She's my princess, lil man. So that just happened last night, and I feel worried and scared for my girlfriend. We kinda just started dating a week ago. Things are really awesome, actually. But the problem was her friend slash stalker, Max. The other night, he broke into her house drunk and tried raping her. The morning after that, he offered to go to dinner and movies with her. Being smart, she said no. Know that she is only a year older than me for this part. Max returns pressing his body against her window. At this point, I'm tired of him and decide to text him, since my girlfriend and Max live a state away from me. She lets him use her phone to text me. I start talking to him, telling him to back off, and he starts freaking out and saying, "She has come to love me, I own her, she's mine." At this point, I ask to talk to my girlfriend again, and have a normal chat with her about what's happening. At this point, near the end, he says he's giving up and starts calling her fat and ugly. He then proceeds to say, "I'm gonna cum on her and kiss her in her sleep. Paint her white with my cum. She's mine, lil man, why the fuck she want you?" I freak out on him, tell him to let me talk to her again. She claims he had left after biting her. We talk for a while, and then big twist and mindfuck for me. Max had never given the phone to her. He mimicked her texting style and tricked me. I finally got to talk to my girlfriend again, feeling sick and drained about how much of a stalker he is. His fuck up, he didn't delete the messages when he left, and my girlfriend showed Max's mom, and happy ending. He has a restraining order. Max is the worst man I've ever met online. I hope to never see him in real life. Let's not meet Max. Classical music stalker. So this happened about 10 years ago and to my mother. I think this is the reason I am afraid of things like private numbers, anonymous phone calls, and any other mysterious phone-related things. According to my mother, she was phoned one day, and when she picked up there was only silence. Then soft violin music started to play. She said it was like elevator-type music, but also classical. Obviously creeped out by this, she told my father, who shrugged it off as a wrongly connected call. Later, I don't know how long, she gets called again. Like the first time, nothing, and then soft classical music. But this time she told whoever was there to talk, quite verbally. A voice of a grown man said, "I love you." Eventually she would receive love letters by a secret admirer, which I think got more detailed and really creepy over time. I can't remember any details, but I remember being creeped out by them. Later this man called back, and my dad got tired and threatened him a few times, and to this day, he has never called back, so creepy classical music lover, admirer of my mother, stalker, poet, let's not meet ever. You will never know who I am, but I know you. Hello, this is my first post, therefore, I apologize in advance for any errors, and for being so friggin' long. I'm currently a 32-year-old female, but when this happened, I was 28. This story will make you say, how the hell didn't you? But I'm being completely truthful, even though it makes me look silly. A little bit about my boyfriend, now ex, we'll call him Andy. He was 30 at the time, and we got back together after 7 years. We had known each other for over 12 years then, meaning I knew him pretty well. He's a very reserved person, and has a hard shell. He doesn't express himself much. but when he does, it means something is really bothering him. Andy has a deepish voice, and sometimes talks in a Caribbean accent. One morning around 5:30 a.m., I received a block call. No biggie. Andy usually called me then. Also blocked. Don't ask why he thought it was funny to wake me up for work. I was dead tired and answered, "Hello?" The voice on the other end said, "Good morning," and I said good morning back. His voice was low, and he had a Caribbean accent. Sounded just like Andy. I said what was wrong and why'd he sound upset. I asked him if something happened with his mom. He said, "Yeah," and then about his daughter's mom. And he said, yeah. I knew he was having some issues with her. He said, "Make me feel better." Mind you, all this time I'm half asleep and still thinking this is Andy. So we started having phone sex, with me doing most of the talking. The next thing I know, Andy comes over the phone. I thought this was strange, because he had never done that before, but figured what the hell, he's stressed, and we hadn't seen each other for a bit. Around 10 a.m., I called Andy to find out how he was doing. He said he was fine. I asked about his mom. He said, "My mom, we're fine. We had Popeyes for dinner last night." Again, I brushed it off, because I figured now he doesn't want to talk about it. Like I mentioned, I knew him pretty well. Went on with my day. Later that evening, around 7 p.m., I received a block call again. Same deep voice, with a Caribbean accent saying, "Hi babe, how are you?" Right away I asked, "Who is this?" He said, "It's me." I asked who. He said, "Your boyfriend." I hung up the phone. I knew it wasn't Andy, because he was at the casino that night, and I just spoken to him moments before. Again he calls and said, "I'm your boyfriend. Don't hang up." I told him to fuck off and hung up. The calls started coming in every single day. I told Andy not to call me private anymore, so I would know it's this freak. My screen ended up shattering, so now I couldn't see who was calling. One day I was at the store and I get a call. He said he loves to hear my voice because it calms him down. He loves my long hair, and I have really nice curves, breasts and ass. He said he always sees me at our local spots, and that he was really close to me right at that moment. I was levied at this point. I told him he was a pussy and to face me. He said he was at the gas station, right across from the store I was at. My heart sank to my stomach. I dropped whatever was in my hands to run to my car. I tried calling Andy, but he was in a meeting. I called my brother-in-law. He and my sister came over to my house. The stalker called back and my brother-in-law answered. They both got into a nasty argument. I took over the phone and hung up. The next day I was driving to work and he calls this time. I stayed calm and asked him how he got my number and why he was harassing me. He said, "It doesn't matter how I have your number. I'm just that good." He said he really likes me, that he knows I'm driving on the highway to work right now, and so was he. I wanted to puke right about then. I told him I'm going to call the cops. He laughed and said there was nothing they can do. Later that evening, I was hanging out with Andy when this creep calls. Andy picks up, and the stalker got furious and asked to speak to me. Andy told him to fuck off and hangs up and tells me to change my number right there. I said I will. The next day he calls and says, "No matter what, you will never find out who I am, but I know you." I changed my number. I was so paranoid walking my dog that summer that I would be constantly looking over my shoulder. When I got out of my car, I would run to my door with the keys ready. Till this day, I don't know who this creepy, disgusting guy was, but I hope I never find out. Creepy, disgusting guy, let's not meet. Ever. Blast from the past. History repeating itself with a creepy ex. First time posting on the sub. Although I've read all your stories almost every day, please excuse any errors, as I'm posting this on my iPhone. Also, it's important to note that this is my friend's story. I told her about the sub and she wanted to share her story, but isn't into Reddit like I am. This happened earlier today. A little backstory. My friend who lives with me, Becca, and I have been best friends for just about 5 years. And when we first became close, she was dating this guy, Ted. Ted and I were friends in high school, but weren't very close at the time he and Becca started dating. They had a lot of problems. They fight a lot, and Ted would break up with her, but then he'd turn around on her and threaten to hurt himself if she didn't take him back. They play the breakup-makeup game that we all know so well, and end up exactly where they were before. Finally, they broke up for good, not without Ted going off the deep end though. They broke up maybe a month before Becca's birthday, 5 years ago in 2011, mind you. and on the day of her birthday, he called her 147 times, without her answering a single one. More crazy shit happened after that. They drifted apart seemingly for good, and then went on with their lives. Meanwhile, at present day, Becca and I have our own apartment together with our boyfriends. My boyfriend Josh, 24 years old, and Becca's boyfriend Sean. Josh and I have been almost together for 2 years, but Becca and Sean are newer within the last couple months. Becca works at our local shopping mall at a hair salon as a stylist. Today she texts me during her shift. "You'll never guess who the fuck came in to get their haircut today." I don't know who. Fucking Ted. He's still as creepy as ever. She went on to tell me that a few nights ago, he had texted her telling her he woke up from a dream, a sexy type of dream about her. He went into detail of what dream Becca did to sleeping Ted, and that he still lived close by, if she was interested in making his dream come true. This had not been the first time he had contacted her, saying something creepy like that, so she asked him not to text her anymore, that she had a boyfriend and wasn't interested. Then she deleted his number and blocked it. But today, he had booked a hair appointment with her, asking for her specifically even, but used the fake last names, so she had no idea until he was already in her chair. He also said things like, "You're just as beautiful as ever. When do you cut your hair short? You live in our town, right? Whereabouts? I'm sure I'm never too far away. We should get together sometime soon and catch up, just like old times." She never told him we live in the town that we do. He hasn't seen her in 5 years. Why now? Why is he doing this after 5 whole years? The scariest part to me is that our downstairs neighbors, who are absolutely awesome, are moving this week. They said the new tenant is a young guy, about our age. His name is Ted. Let's not meet. Mom's ex-boyfriend intrudes. My mom dated this guy, Jim, for a few years, maybe from 2001 to 2003. He was a seemingly nice guy, clean cut, had a gut, but was easily over 6 feet and fairly built. No children and owned property, in a city in the Midwest. I remember being disappointed when she broke up with him, as he was fun to be around, though she claimed she didn't want to be with him anymore because he was a smoker. Fast forward to about a year later. It was about 1 in the afternoon. My 13-year-old self is playing video games in my room while my mom is at work. I hear a garage door open, and given that we lived in a cozy townhouse, the sound of the door opening was relatively pronounced. I thought it was weird though, as she was never off until 4 or 5, and she would have called if she was getting off early, so I peer out her window, which directly overlooks the driveway, only to see a silver Audi parked outside her ex's car. After a few minutes, I'm thinking, shit, why is he at her house? She hadn't been communicating with him at all since they broke up. I don't think he got out of his car because he eventually closed the door and pulled out of the driveway after a few minutes. This led me to believe that he still had our door code programmed into his car. Had he come in, it would have been easy for him to hear me upstairs given the size of our house. I ended up calling my mom and telling her that he'd come by and opened the garage, presumably to see if my mom was home. She mentioned that he had recently been bugging her about some bottles of wine that he owned or wanted back from our house anyways. She said she would change the garage code when she got home, but that never actually happened. Fast forward about 5 or 6 years during the summertime. At the time I was staying with my dad. One day I received a call from my mom, asking if I'd been to the house at some point during the daytime. She was somewhat grilling me because some obvious things like chairs in the kitchen, etc., had been moved out of place. My mom is very peculiar about things being neat and organized. I kinda laughed and said no because I hadn't been to the house in a few days. I wasn't expecting her follow-up question. "Did you put the dog in the bathroom and then put a chair in front of the door?" This was incredibly odd, and she started to freak out after I still said no. Someone had ushered our dog into the bathroom, which directly faces the kitchen, left the door open, and then blocked her in with one of the chairs. I stayed on the phone with her as she checked throughout the house to see if anyone was there or if anything else was out of place. Thankfully, nothing else was amok. This was truly bizarre given that It definitely seemed like someone had entered the house and sectioned off the dog as some kind of safety precaution before presumably looking around the house. Since there weren't any signs of forced entry, I was led to believe that my mom's ex-boyfriend still possessed our garage code and was the one who entered. This would have been incredibly easy since the door between the garage and utility room was always unlocked. She finally changed the garage code and started locking the utility room door when she wasn't home. I later found out that her ex never stopped emailing, texting, or calling her since they broke up. There were actually never any wine bottles either. He just kept badgering her and harassing her for money that she owed him, given that nobody else had our garage code except for my dad, who was out of town at the time. All signs point to the ex-boyfriend. It's creepy to think that he still had our garage code after so many years of being broken up and not communicating. It makes me wonder how many other items he might have come by besides the two notable occurrences. Change your garage code after you get out of a relationship. You never know who may come by. Apologies if I ramble too much, and grammar.